Here we are back again with this half-scale steam engine, and you have probably seen the video of the spark show that this little engine put on just night before last, and I am able to spend a little bit of extra time with a fella who is very well connected with his machine. And I'm sorry, I've already forgotten your name. Introduce yourself. Dale Wolf. And I believe your family has some of the other steam engines out here that are full scale. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I've been very curious since the threshing bee in Fairview, Oklahoma, to get a little bit more background on how this half-scale model came into being. More importantly, how did the whole idea come about? Who was inspired to do something like this?
A guy by the name of Tom Turning out of Valley Center, Kansas, was a huge steam enthusiast. One of the people who was actually one of the original members of the Pawnee group here, and he had several engines, and it was his brainchild to mass produce a working model. Since not everybody has a CDL, they don't have permits to carry around a 10,000 pound steam engine. They don't have the truck, they don't have fuel. This engine here I can pull behind a half-ton pickup and a 16-foot bumper pull trailer, and I can still pull a 3-bottom plow and belt up to most shingle mills. And well, you can still work it.
Right.
From here, it works just like the full size. Everything here is half scale to a 1915 65 horse case. It's built in...
Yeah, even these little boxes down here, like this one holds coal. It's got the case emblem on the outside, shaped somewhat similar to the other case. Don't have one sitting right there, right across the way. I'll zoom in over there. You can see the similarities there. All right, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Go right ahead. No problem. So this engine here was built in the early 80s. There was roughly 100 to 135 of these built.
Oh, I see.
He mass produced them, so that way the steam engine collectors and the members of the hobby can have something sometimes where you can't afford or can't move one of this size.
Yeah.
There was an engine up farther north by Corey Anderson. He built the 150 horse case, and it's guaranteed $30,000 just to haul it.
Wow.
Because by the time you get on, tack on fuel, permits, hiring the truck driver, and for however long he's going to be going to these different shows. So it's a chunk of change. I mean, that's a lot bigger engine, obviously a lot bigger than what we have here.
Right.
But there's some of these engines here, it's going to cost you $5, $6, $7, up to $10,000 just to haul it. Now today's price of fuel. So these right here are just more or less the hobbyist. You don't have to have a big rig. You don't have to have all your overweight permits, over height, over width. This one here is very convenient, very small, but still large enough to work with.
Right. Well, I suspect some of these parts had to be custom manufactured.
Every
but then
piece on here was custom manufactured or modified of some sort.
Okay.
Everything on here was custom made, as in all your rough castings were casted in the foundry. All the bunkers were handmade. All your rough pieces are handmade. Only thing that is off a factory pre-produced tractor is my differential gear and also my intermediate gear, which one's off of a Farmall and the other one's off of John Deere. Inside that stud right here, yes, correct. If you can see on side this front gear, I'm not sure if it's turned correctly, but it's been modified, but you can actually still see the part number from the tractor it came off of, and you used to be able to see, yes, right there. There's the JD for John Deere. This is out of a This is out of a John Deere. I believe an A John Deere.
Okay.
And other than, I believe the governor is the only thing that was pre-existing that was not hand fabricated.
I see.
But everything else.
Do the governors like this
There were
exist
some
new anymore, or are there reproduction governors?
I don't know if
Are
any
they
of them
still in use
reproduced,
on
but there are
industrial
some
equipment?
on some of your steam engines. Not many anymore. Still have a governor. Most of the time, it's on a regulator. It's all electronic nowadays.
Okay.
Like I said, there's no electronics anywhere here. Everything's all mechanical, and you know that at the time, whenever the full-size engines were being built back in the early 1900s up until the early to mid 20s,
Yeah.
all mechanical was the only thing they had, and really, it's quite a spoiler. It's you know, it kind of makes you spoiled because you know if something goes wrong, you know exactly what it is.
Right.
And it's just impressive that there's, like I said, there's about 100 of these built. There's no two of them alike. The way they built them, Tom Turning was a fabricator, and so not every piece was identical to the next one. And
okay.
he was constantly modifying them, constantly saying what worked, how could I do this better, and each one of them has something a little bit better. This one here, Tom kept for his personal self, his engine. And so this is one of the last engines he had. And so this is actually a mid-production engine, but it has a lot of later parts because he modified this one. So my drawbar is beefed up. Okay. I have different levers, different eccentric.
These levers look like they might have been repurposed from...
Those are actually casted levers from patterns.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so a lot of these here...
Wow. And that's sort of a lost art anymore.
Yes. Not many people do it anymore.
Exactly.
Not many people are fabricators. There are some of the hobby machinists, and that still are making models. There's actually the guy from Kansas that just been working on one that I've been talking with here for the last year or so.
Wow.
Some of the additions, this engine came with a insulating jacket, which it was wood slats wrapped in like a piece of tin. So it holds heat in. It kind of helps it make it a little bit more efficient. Well, with our state boiler inspections we have to go through every year, they had to make the jacket had to be taken off.
Wow.
Because to do our 150 to 200 ultrasonic test points we have to do every 5 years.
Yes.
The jacket had to be removed, and unfortunately the jacket was destroyed in removal.
Oh no.
So my dad and I, we actually spent the time, got a piece of pipe, and we cut out this butt strap, this dummy butt strap, and we hand riveted each one of these rivets on here.
Wow.
There's roughly 150 to 200 of them. I can't remember the exact number anymore. But each one of these was hand riveted on this steel, and we welded it on to make it look like dummy butt straps. If you go look at the big one, it actually has this butt strap.
Okay. Well, and I see that it keeps the idea of using chains and a worm screw. I guess.
See, with these bigger engines, this is pre-power steering, and so this is using a worm gear to the chain system. That's really the most efficient way to steer something this heavy.
Yeah.
Even though this engine right here dry, this is no water, no coal, it's just all steel.
Right.
It roughly weighs 4,200 to 4,600 pounds.
Wow.
Estimated, somewhere in that range. And with water, it's going to weigh upwards of 550.
Yeah. I'll say.
So
now, a number of people have told me that this has a pretty large firebox compared to, I guess, the boiler size.
This here actually doesn't. You know, everything is still half scale, but as you say, when you go to start reducing in size, I don't carry. Yes, I'm half the size measurement-wise. You can take a measurement anywhere on this right here. It'll be 20 inches. On the big one, it'll be 40 inches. Okay. My wheels are this number. This is my everything. Every one direction measurement will be exactly one half of the full-size engine. But that doesn't always work with volume. So my volume, whereas the floor of my firebox compared to the full-size ones, I'm really only about a quarter the size.
I see.
Because I'm reduced by half and half again.
I see.
So I'm only about a quarter of that size. So by volume and area. So I only hold just a fraction of what they can hold. So what happens is, so I do have a little bit smaller firebox, but I make up for it in just smaller portions.
I see. Well, I'm sure it's easier to bring your water to a boil and then producing steam than when you have a larger volume of water.
Yes. I'm a little bit faster, but not by a whole lot.
I see.
Where if the boiler's still warm, the water's still warm from the previous day,
Yeah.
I can have steam up in about 30 to 45 minutes. Whereas one of the big ones is going to be 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
So it's not that much faster, but it is just a marginally small.
Right.
It's very small.
I was just talking offhand to several people yesterday, and they were expressing this idea that that it was a shame that our energy stream has gotten away from using steam, which seems to be extremely powerful. Steam in itself doesn't pollute. And you know, there's very many advantages of using steam. Like some of these larger engines out here produce very low horsepower, and yet they're able to do monumentous tasks. And so, you know, as they were pining about that, I says, well, what do you think is the major reason why people have gotten away from steam-powered automobiles? There used to be steam-powered automobiles and other things like that. And they're going well.
Is you had two different fuel sources. It's a lot easier. Say there's a company by the name of Stanley, and also White made steam cars as well.
Right.
There's more than that. There's like Doble and countless others.
Right.
But White, or Stanley is what we're going to use. Stanley actually used gasoline as their pilot burner.
Yeah.
That's what actually heated the water. That was their fuel source. So then also they'd also use that steam, and that water would be exhausted.
Yeah.
So whereas most of their emissions was water vapor, it's still they were using gasoline as well.
Right.
So it's finding an alternative fuel. So what you're doing is using the fuel to create another fuel.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot easier to take the Model T, which costed a fraction of what it cost to buy a Stanley.
Right.
And the Stanleys were probably the most affordable of the steam cars at the time, of the 1910 to 1920. And so it was a lot easier to go pay just about $1,000 to go get you a nice brand new Model T.
Right.
Where you fill it up with gas and you can go across the country.
Which means actually there's less trouble or maintenance involved in a machine of that nature.
Whereas a Model T, with being new and being properly maintained, you can have a Model T started in just a matter of a couple minutes at most. Whereas a Stanley steam car took anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to have steam up enough to move itself.
There you go.
So your wife's pregnant, you got her in the passenger seat. Oh, wait, we got to fire up the steam engine.
Exactly.
We got to fire up the Stanley.
Yes.
Whereas the Model T, turn your buzz coils on, give it a couple of cranks on the cranks, bust off, and you're on your way.
Right. So
convenience.
I suggested another point is that what you were just talking about, but I'll break it down into the word convenience, or you could also say immediacy. People are so used to our machines today where we just climb into a vehicle, insert a key or press a button, and you're fired up and you're ready to go. And you brought out perfectly.
Well,
you know,
the phrase "time is money."
Yes, yes.
Where people are so worried about being faster, being more convenient, takes less work and get more out of it.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of these here got obsoleted.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because we'll look at the modern tractors today. They're push button start. There's some of them that are even run off satellite GPS.
Yeah.
That once you map in the field you're plowing, you just press a button and the tractor just does the rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it's incredible.
It's taken the human element out of it.
Right.
And so we'll look at our factory systems today. How many workers are actually putting together your new Chevrolet pickup?
Yeah.
Most of it's, all the welds are being done by robots.
Yeah.
All the painting's being done by robots.
True.
It's making this faster, more efficient.
Yeah.
And so it's obsoleting the human element.
Right, right.
So it kind of...
Well, kind of getting back to the fabrication of this machine, I got to wondering yesterday as I was watching some of the larger engines work, especially on the threshing machine, these belts.
Yes.
They're not too much different from what was used way back in the day.
Yes.
I guess I just kind of wondered, are you still able to purchase belts like this?
There's actually a lot of your like rock quarries, rock crushers, they're actually still using canvas belts.
Okay.
There actually is some people who actually are still in this preservation hobby actually still makes these belts. A lot of your modern hay baler actually has rubber or canvas belts that bales the hay.
Okay.
So these belts are actually still being used, being produced today.
Yeah.
So all of these companies, since we send them in our information of how long we need it, how wide we need it, how thick we need it, and they're like, "Yep, sure, we got that on the shelf."
Okay.
And so a lot of this stuff we can still readily get.
Excellent.
Like the pop valves, they steam pop valves. We can still get these. I actually have a new one in the truck, a brand new one. This one here is still working good, so I'm not gonna use it yet.
Yeah.
But we can still get these. A lot of these stuff they're still being used on air tanks, big gas tanks.
Okay.
A lot of these parts actually you can still readily get to this day. And what we can't get, we can pretty well fabricate.
Yes, yes. And some of those things that were cast are heavy duty enough that they're not likely to break anytime soon.
No. No. This one here was made with modern casting, so it might not be as brittle as some of the older stuff.
Yes.
Back when they were just throwing what metal they could into a big pot and melting it down and pouring it into a mold. These are here, it's a little bit better quality, so this one here might be a little bit stronger. So.
Right. Well, we've been looking at this side pretty much.
Yes.
And, well, can you explain some of the controls up here? What some of these hand levers do?
All right, well, this right here is my clutch for one. This right here is in the out position. That means it is disengaged from the rear wheels. So just the engine can free spin.
Okay, is that like a disc clutch that you would find in a...
It's a friction clutch.
Okay.
This is 2 paths. As you can see, once I engage it, I'm not sure if you'll see it too well, but it'll pushes those out to the inside of the flywheel. So now it's
very good.
Now it's got a good bite, and now I got all my power going to my wheels. Back out. So here's my throttle. Right now I have it open because now we're trying to winterize it. Make sure there's no water going to stay inside of it.
Okay.
So right there's in the closed vision, there's my throttle.
All right.
And right here, since a steam engine can run in either direction, I have my reversing lever. Which you can see, it moves this eccentric, which that changes my valve gear, my valve train, the angle of my valve train, allowing it to run in either direction.
Okay.
Back to the power of steam is that a DC electric motor and a steam engine can run in either direction. They can start at full power from a dead stop.
Yeah.
They can have full power and full torque at a dead stop. So.
And really there's no transmission per se where you have a number of different gears you have to shift through.
Exactly, yes. There are some engines that do have a high and a low gear.
Okay.
But these weren't really one of them. Some of the English-made engines did have multiple ranges.
Okay.
They had a road range that could go a little bit faster. But the American engines, they were more or less on the farm. They were for plowing, so pulling efficiency was priority.
Yeah.
And if they had, and since the United States is so much larger, the farmland is so much larger than what England had. Most of the time, if we had to travel any significant distance, they would just load it up on a flat car and rail, and they would on a train, they would take it to the next place they're going to harvest.
And of course, another important aspect of machines like this was this flywheel, where you could put a belt on there to drive other types of equipment.
The belt pulley, you have a sawmill, thrash machine, shingle mill.
Water
That's what a lot of these steam engines did. Most of the ones here, that's what they did, was ran a thrash machine on a thrashing crew here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And So most of them did mostly belt work. Now some of them did plow. They did break the sod. And but yeah, so most of them did belt work. They do have a drawbar. They do have a pulling power. I'm trying to think what I was going to say, but
Oh, that's quite all right.
but no, it's.
I was just going to mention that as when I was young, my grandfather, he did not have a steam-powered engine. He just used a tractor that had a takeoff wheel like this, and he used his tractor, a belt, and a buzzsaw to cut all of his firewood for the winter season. He lived in south central Montana, so that was the only way he had to heat his home. So that type of power takeoff has been useful for many, many years. He also was able to pump water out of the Yellowstone River into a cistern so that he would have a reliable source of water that he could look over. And there were times when the Yellowstone was frozen over. And sometimes it was dangerous to get out there on that ice because you might fall through. And of course the river would carry you under the ice miles down the river before you ever found a place to get back up again. So being able to do that safely, I think, was something that he utilized his tractor and that type of source of power at the time.
The steam is very still alive today. Even though it seems like a lot of this stuff seems obsolete, but we've also found reasons to use steam. And still, even these big coal power plants, to this day, they're still steam powered. Instead of being a steam engine, it's a steam generator, steam turbine.
Right.
And so all these coal power plants, they're burning coal into these big boilers to just same principles here, and we're turning that steam into electricity. The nuclear power plants, they eliminate coal and they're using nuclear power. That extreme heat turns water into steam, and that's why you see those big towers. You see a lot of steam coming off those towers. It's actually water vapor, not nuclear waste. But so still steam is being used. Steam is still the only power source that's on a modern aircraft carrier. It's they're still using steam to launch the airplanes off the carriers. They've experimented with electricity, and it's just too inconsistent. Steam is still the only consistent power source that's launching these.
Shall we take a look on the other side of the engine, see if there's anything over here that well, of course, here we have our steam cylinder, which the steam expands in and generates the power off of the steam. And then that goes to this wheel here, and then eventually winds up down to the wheels, which you kind of like to go through that.
Well, start off with your steam inside the boiler.
Yes.
We'll come up to this dome, up through this valve, and I have my throttle valve is right here. The steam will make a 90-degree turn into the governor, which is another valve itself. We'll come back to that. It'll go into a steam chest, which is the square piece here in the back, that's where the valve gear is, where the valve is. And what that does, since the steam engine is a double-acting piston, it'll put steam, that valve, based on what location I have my rushing lever in, it tells the cylinder which side of the piston to put the steam on. Whereas your modern, say, 4-stroke combustion engine, it's going to have 1 power stroke for every 2 revolutions. I have 2 power strokes per revolution.
Right.
So, as I'm putting power here, which will come across the crankshaft to the clutch, through the gears, down to the wheels. Where I pull the clutch out and all that power goes down the belt.
Oh, okay.
It will then exhaust through this preheater up here and make a 90-degree up the stack, which my exhaust will actually pull a draft, actually pulling more air into my firebox, making my fire burn more efficiently.
I see. So unlike a chimney, which kind of depends on a draft that's created by a breeze outside or just rising heat, you actually have residual steam that
my exhaust
helps to create that draft. A suction, in other words. which brings in more oxygen to your firebox. That's pretty clever. Okay, well, do these have any type of a differential?
Yes, they do have a differential. You can, it's under the cover right there, but it does have a differential.
Okay. Now, this is much higher than the hub of the wheel. How does that get transferred to the wheels itself? And is it equal on both sides?
It has a small gear on the crankshaft. It goes to a gear reduction intermediate gear, which will then go to my differential.
Okay.
My differential will come across this upper cannon bearing, which will go to these upper pinion gears up here at the top, which will go to my big bull gears that are bolted directly to the wheel. But I have a center axle, but the center axle kind of free spins, kind of free rotates.
Okay, we'll have to kind of apologize to the people who are watching this video, I guess. There's a lot of mud on here because the day before this show started, I believe there were 4 inches of rain here in Pawnee, Oklahoma. So we're still suffering from that. You can tell from the ground. Thankfully, it's been warming up a little bit. We can see it's starting to dry out a little bit. So a little bit hard to see in there. I'll see if I can try one more time. There's that tiny gear that comes off the drive shaft, and then you can see part of the bull gear behind the wheel there in red. So basically, you have the same amount of power going to each rear wheel.
Yes.
Okay.
If I'm in a straight line, I can. And
that's
to
better
lock
than
out my
having
differential, this hole that's right here, if I can time it into this cross section, I can actually put a pin in there and actually lock my differential.
Oh, wow.
So I can have power to both wheels.
Oh, okay.
Full power to both wheels.
Okay.
That's when you really get in a bind.
Right, right.
So.
And there are no spring suspensions to these machines at all, is
all
there?
rigid.
So that makes a pretty rough ride, I would think. I've never gotten to ride on one yet.
Not fast enough to really be rough.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they're heavy enough, they actually push down in the dirt, so they kind of smooth it out themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed yesterday during the steam engine games, one of the competitors got a large block of wood and ran over to the other machine and stuck that block of wood underneath one of the rear wheels. And of course the engineer on the other machine was not aware that was happening. So when he ran up against that wooden block, he didn't know what to think. And it kind of took a couple of tries to get over that wooden block, even though it was only about 8 inches tall. I thought that was an interesting display of how you encounter things maybe unexpected and how it has to be handled.
Yeah, it was actually, the engine wasn't really struggling to get over it. It was more or less stuck in the wrong quarter. See, I can, in a forward motion, I can only start in this quadrant and this quadrant.
Okay.
Where in reverse, I can start in this quadrant and this quadrant. So getting the steam engine in the proper position to start in the direction I want to go. Sometimes you see when an engine's about ready to move, you'll see them put it into reverse, hit the throttle a little bit, shut the throttle, put it back in the direction I want to go. Getting the engine to roll in the right position.
Yeah, that kind of came out in the games as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have multiple things I can do here in the back platform to help me run efficiently too as well.
I see.
From the platform, I can see my pressure gauge, which shows me how much pressure I have in the boiler.
Right.
I have my water sight glass, which tells me how much water in the boiler I have. I do have a minimum operating pressure. I do have a minimum operating level, which is where it's marked by this peg.
Okay.
And I want to keep it, at least, I want to be able to see the water in my glass at all times. Right now I have the boiler drained down. Like I said, we're winterizing.
Right. And how much is normal full capacity on water?
Really, I want to keep it between a half a glass and this peg. If I'm running, if I'm under load.
Whereas, as far as volume in your holding tank, I presume you have a water reservoir.
Yes, I do have a water tank. It's underneath my bunkers here. It's underneath the floor.
Okay.
It roughly holds about 100 gallons.
Okay.
So I have 100 gallons roughly in reservoir.
Okay. And then you can probably hold, what, about 20 gallons of coal or whatever?
Yeah, probably about 10 gallons of coal.
Yeah.
About a 5-gallon bucket will fill up one bucket.
Okay.
So I have my, see, per Oklahoma regulations, I'm sure it's more than just Oklahoma, but we have to have 2 methods of injecting water into the boiler.
Okay.
While under pressure. So I have my steam injector here, and I also have my water pump. Well, some engines won't have a water pump, so they'll have 2 injectors. But we have to have 2 methods of putting water in the boiler.
I see.
And able to pass inspection. So I'll have it. So we'll have 2. That's one.
Yeah. So here's one of your pickup.
This is actually a return for the water pump.
Okay.
As my water pump, my engine's running, the water pump's constantly pumping. And so what it does, it comes up here into this check valve, and it'll pump water, it'll run through, it'll actually return back down into here. I close it, if I close this valve right here,
Yeah.
as the engine's running, it'll force water to go through another check valve and into the boiler. If I open this here, it takes that pressure away and allows it to return back into my water tank.
Oh, okay. And I just saw this here. Is this your choke?
It's actually my, it's my cylinder drain cox. Yeah, my cylinder drain cox. What it does is there's 2 little valves at the bottom of my cylinder. I think I should go up there to see them. It's the bottom of my cylinder on both sides of the piston. There's 2 little holes down here with these closed by these valves.
Oh, okay.
So I can open these valves, and after the engine's set for a minute, all of the steam that's still inside the cylinder will condense back down to water.
Right.
Well, since water doesn't compress, that can cause damage to the engine if it
hydrolock.
It'll hydrolock, or it'll either bust my piston or bust the head.
Yeah.
So what I can do is I can open this up. It'll drain the water out down these tubes down to the ground.
Okay.
So I can drain the water back out of the piston. Out of the cylinder.
All right. Anything else that you think is a major departure from the larger scale models, or?
Other than that, I'm not sure if you can hear it too well, but you actually hear a blower inside the background.
Yes.
Which
that hissing noise.
Once they start building steam at a low pressure, I have one too. I also have one. This little valve right here. I can open this up, and what this does is it opens a valve off the steam dome. It'll actually does the same thing as the exhaust. Runs through this tube right here, which will come in here and also points up.
Okay.
Which I'm actually using steam to help pull a draft to my fire as well, making my fire burn hotter.
Okay.
As my heat's transferred, if this is full of water, how is the smoke getting from back there to up here?
Yeah.
The bigger engines have a lot more than I do, but I only have 11 tubes that run from the inside the firebox clear up here to the smoke box.
Oh yeah, that was here pretty clearly.
Thank you.
There's still some sawdust cinders in there from doing the spark show the other night.
Yep.
I understand that those sparks are very effective cleaners for these flues. You don't have to use a flue brush.
A lot of your modern boilers on the steam locomotives, steam locomotives like the big boy that just run, you actually see, since it's burning oil, there's really they don't have time to stop and swab the flues to clean them out. What they'll do is, being an oil burner, it leaves kind of like a residue. What they'll do is they'll actually pour sand through a hole that actually pulls a draft, and it'll run that sand through it and actually scrapes the tubes.
Oh, we have a steam locomotive in Amarillo, Texas that's on display, and it was converted from being a coal burner to an oil burner. But I talked to a fireman who actually worked on that locomotive, and well, the locomotive had a sandbox on there, and
a lot of times,
I found out there were several uses for that sandbox, and indeed he did bring that aspect of using the sand out to help blow the
clean the tube, or actually use it for traction,
or whatever. That is
them
generated off that heavy oil is what they were using for fuel.
Heavy oil.
Yeah.
Well, soda up quite thick.
Yes.
So as they're making a run,
very dirty.
they'll pour sand down to the firebox, they'll suck it through and clean the tubes out.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. Okay, well, I think that there will be people watching this video who will have tons of questions.
Of course.
And call me stupid as usual, you know, because I try to be as ignorant as possible in order for experts like yourself to be able to rise and shine and you know, educate us all.
Well, I will actually try to jump on some of your comments and actually answer some questions if they would want to.
Oh, I'd appreciate that.